So welcome along to A Story to Tell with me, Richard Beauvoisin. This is mainly taken from my Radio Bath show every Thursday morning from 10 until 12. If you do like it, don't forget to subscribe, share it to others and let everyone know all about Radio Bath. Hope you enjoy it. Morning everybody, it's Richard Beauvoisin here until midday today. There's starry-eyed Ellie Goulding. Can't believe that's 2010. 14 years old, blimey. Anyway, hope you're feeling well. Today the leg end is back. So the wonderful character, and he's definitely a character, Jonny Gould, fellow Radio Bath presenter. We're going to do part 2. He was in here at the beginning of August. He's just walking into the room now, looking way too smart if I'm honest with you, Jonny. But there we go. He's going to be on in about 5-10 minutes or so. We're going to be going all about part 2 of his life. So looking forward to chatting to Jonny. Any questions for him, studio@radiobath.com or text Bath followed by your message to 80011. There's a Style Council, You're the Best Thing. 1984, Jonny. Morning.
Morning, Richard. 1984, what a great time that was. What a great track that was.
It was a great track as well. See, I've looked at the music we got today, and I remember from last time when you were here, basically anything that didn't say the word or have the numbers 19 at the beginning of it didn't really exist.
100%.
So,
100%. The greatest era of modern music, 1980s, 1990s, and a bit of 1970s and 60s. Okay. Anything beyond 2000, except for maybe Coldplay and Adele.
Okay.
That's me.
That's you.
Me. Boring.
It's not boring.
You're talking about a man in his teens that thought that Neil Diamond was the coolest man ever. You know, everyone else was punks and, you know, to Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple. And I just thought Neil Diamond was a legend. And thankfully saw him in concert before he had to quit, obviously, with his diagnosis of Parkinson. Yeah. And I spent an obscene sum of money and got amazing seats. And I think it was Wembley. No, O2 Arena. And we were on the floor. I think we were about, 15 rows back. And worth every penny. So when was this that you saw Neil Diamond? His last tour. His last
amazing.
tour.
So did you get to see him when you were younger?
No, never did. No. It was one of those, this is something I have to do.
Okay.
And obviously didn't realise his illness and thought, right, well, I'm pushing out the boat, if we're going to do it properly. And then, of course, literally within weeks of having seen him and said it was the greatest concert I've ever been to, I was in tears. Right. He had me in tears because so many of his songs resonate from, moments of your life. And that's the beauty of music, of course, is you're transported back to that moment that you heard that song for the first time.
Yeah. I'm just thinking if you'd have taken or tried to take anybody else with you when you were a teenager to go and see Neil Diamond, you'd have been going by yourself.
I wouldn't care. I went to the cinema on my own on a regular basis. I'd go to a concert on my own. I'll sit in a pub on my own. Now you know why my strapline on my Twitter account is totally unspoiled by failure. Go on,
we're going to talk about that then. I was going to talk. Remind us we're going to come back to totally unspoiled by failure. Okay. First of all, Jonny Gould, who are you? Okay, so I had to have you back in. I had to have you back in because we chatted for 2 hours back in August.
Yes.
And we literally scratched the surface of who you are.
I can only apologise, Richard.
Yeah, I know. And I felt obliged, if I'm honest with you, to have you back in. But, it's just one of those things I had to do. So who is Jonny Gould?
Someone who uses 10 words when one will do.
Only
explains
10?
Why I'm back for the second time to complete the story. Someone who's kissed the Blarney Stone twice. Much to my mother's horror.
The what stone?
The Blarney Stone. Have you ever heard of Blarney Castle? That's why the Irish have the gift of the gab, because they've all kissed the Blarney Stone.
What is the Blarney Stone?
It literally is. It's a myth that and it's that basically if you kiss the Blarney Stone, you've got the gift of the gab. And,
right.
And I went with my parents on holiday on a couple of occasions. Loved Southern Ireland, absolutely beautiful part of the world, and we visited Blarney Castle, and I already had a gob on me, and I went to kiss it, sort of half kissed it, knocked my head, and the Irish chap who was holding on to me, because they literally have to hold onto your legs while you lean through a hole to kiss it, because it's actually on the outside of the fortress, and he said, you didn't do that very well. He said, I think you should kiss it again, and my mother was going, no!
Is that your Irish accent?
That was, by the way, yeah, sorry.
Just double checking.
It's funny you should do that. Every time I put an accent on, and I am terrible at accents, my lovely girlfriend, Lulabelle, she gives me far worse jip than you've just given me. So clearly I should stop. Clearly I should stop and just stick with my own accent.
It is great. It is great. So now, just very quickly, somebody said a phrase to me the other day, which I hadn't heard. Okay, yes. So somebody asked her where she was going on holiday, and she went, I'm going to Argate. And I was like, where's that? And she went, have you never heard of that? So I'm going to ask you the same question. Have you ever heard of Argate?
I'm assuming that's Margate with a silent M in Kent.
No, it's Argate at the back of the garden.
Okay.
That's what she...
Is that right?
And
I've never heard of it.
Okay, it's not just
Argate
me
at the back of the garden.
Argate.
Fabulous.
So yeah, that's where she's going on holiday, Argate.
I relate big time.
So back to the script, because I think we've got one. I'm not sure where it is, but we've got a script somewhere. So what have you done apart from being an amazing radio Bath presenter? What else have you done? And we're going to talk about them, but
well, I tried to be a professional actor. 10 years of spectacular failure. Mentioned last time in my film debut in the epic movie Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, described by Time Out magazine as the worst film ever made in cinematography history, and they edited me out.
Yeah.
So that's sort of symbolic of how well that went. Wasn't even in the bill. After that, I went into television because my two best mates were very successful TV presenters, and they gave me a bit of a leg up. TV debut at the iconic channel Croydon Cable, live and exclusive to London boroughs of Croydon, Sutton, Merton, Kingston and Richmond. Potential viewing audience of 1 million. If my Uncle Alec in reality was watching in Worcester Park, it was about 7. And then sort of ended up at Channel 5. I did lots of other, did ESPN and stuff, and I had a wonderful time for 20 years and achieved pretty much nothing. Didn't achieve any kind of status. 12 years presenting Channel 5 baseball was the highlight, which I absolutely loved. To this day, I look back on it as the best 12 years of my life from a working perspective, apart from Radio Bath, obviously.
Of course, Radio Bath is everything.
But got to do lots of different programmes that nobody watched, but they were great fun. A couple of game shows, lots of sports shows. Went to ESPN, did Chelsea TV, which was a big passion of mine because I'm a hardcore Chelsea fan, and did that for about 20-something years. And during that, I did an auction as a favour to a friend. Never done an auction before in my life, and it went pretty well. Ended up doing a lot of them. Ended up emceeing dinners, and I was just doing that as a sideline. And then when everything went completely, AWOL from a TV perspective, and I needed to do something to earn a living, I sort of geared it up. And before you knew it, I was actually, for the first time in my life, doing something that was deemed to be vaguely successful, which was a bit of a shock to the system, Richard, if I'm brutally honest.
Well, we're going to talk much more about your auctioneering a bit later. Now, in the research for doing, chatting to you again, I came across a YouTube clip where you ended up on GB News.
Yes. Talking
about, people falling through the cracks. I'm just intrigued at how the connection came. This is during COVID times. How the connection came that they asked you to go onto the sofa. So I was just flabbergasted.
Well, it was sort of just after COVID, in fairness.
Okay.
And I was working for Peter Jones. I've worked for Peter's Foundation for about 15 years. Huge fan of Peter's. In fact, I was working for him yesterday, which is why I had a bit of a late night. And he's a wonderful human being, and he's got lots of very, very successful friends who come to his events, and he raises amazing amounts of money for his foundation that basically supports young people to become entrepreneurs, to become businessmen. Okay. And he has very strong views about how appalling the syllabus is, and the educational syllabus when it comes to business studies, and he's trying to get the government to change it.
I couldn't agree more.
But he provides funding, he provides mentoring, etc. through the foundation, and has affected thousands of young people who particularly, and I think 50-60% of the money they raise is targeted at young men and women who come from disadvantaged situations. Okay. So that's what's so awesome about it. And there's so much talent out there. Yeah. And obviously having someone that believes in you of his stature, and that's what the foundation is all about. I absolutely love it and love what he does, and he's completely and utterly committed to it. To him, it's the most important thing he does. And we're talking about somebody who's...
So this is Peter Jones?
Peter Jones, Dragon's Den.
Dragon's Den, tallest man in the world?
Yes. Well, he's actually, well, he's not as tall as one of my other mates, but he's a big man.
He's
about 6'9", He's a very tall man. So it was one of his events, just sort of as COVID was starting to relax, because obviously there was an event, and Bev Turner. Remember Bev Turner?
I don't.
She's a presenter. She used to be married to the Olympic rower. And I've known Bev for many, many years, and she's a radio presenter and everything. And she had just got a gig as a presenter at GB News, and we'd been friends. I'd known Bev for many years. And she said, "Oh my God, Johnny, you'd be perfect for my show."
Okay.
Literally. And I said, but what are you doing? She told me. And I said, well, what would it entail? She said, literally just come sit in the studio with me, talk about topical issues. I did slightly question my relevance as someone who's never had a proper job in his life, but she was very keen. And who was I to say no, having not been on TV for about 4 or 5 years? I was, truth be told, I was chomping at the bit. And I think I went and did it three, 4 times. Yeah. Enjoyed it.
You looked, really annoys me, people like yourself. You looked really comfortable. It looked like the most natural thing you've ever done in your life. And it's always the glasses.
Yeah.
Are they your Superman moment? Kind of, because you have the glasses, and if you're not quite sure, you just fiddle with the glasses, and then you go back. Yes.
Well, I can't see a thing without them.
Okay.
And I had some notes, because obviously I'm a man who likes to prepare. Fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. That was my dad's motto. So I've always got notes. So I need the glasses. I can't read them without them.
Fair enough.
And I think that's the result of 20-something years of auctioneering. 27 years, oh my lord. 27 years of auctioneering, because looking at a script in front of me, a table plan, and then looking out to an audience, my poor eyes, that sort of constant change of focus, and now my eyes are shot to pieces.
So you were mentioning Peter Jones, and you were doing that yesterday. So what was yesterday's event then? Just tell us.
It was a first, actually. It was an inaugural new event they did down at Goodwood. Have you ever been down to Goodwood?
I haven't, but I do know it.
So Goodwood Track, where they've got the Goodwood Revival. So they used the track sort of for a special sort of Cars Day, and he got his mate, who I know really well because we were in the same agency, Rick Parfitt Jr. Rick Parfitt, as in Status Quo's son, who is a phenomenal performer, an absolutely phenomenal performer. I would edge to say better than his dad,
right?
Who I was still a massive fan. I was a massive Status Quo fan, first concert I ever went to. But Rick is a lovely man, but he also was a professional driver and a championship winner in various touring cars. And he's a mate of Peter, so he came down with one of his own cars to take people out the track at obscene speeds, but obviously with some safety, because he's a multi-talented individual. And he blew the car up within 20 minutes of arriving. So they then had to borrow another one, and I don't know how they got around the insurance issue, but that's another story. I think it was Rick that needed to be insured, and in the end, not quite sure how he got that sorted. But anyway, so interesting day that the Pro blew the car up, but they had the most amazing time. And after that, they all came back to the Goodwood House for a lunch and some fundraising, and I hosted the lunch and I hosted the auction, which went unbelievably well. We could not believe how generous they were. We had a Connors Brothers painting, and that went for £23,000.
Wow.
Which actually is a bargain, because the Connor Brothers are a big news, and they keep donating these. These are originals for nothing. They just give it all to Peter, which is an amazing gesture, I think. So we raised. I think Peter announced that with all the fundraising across the board for the day, they'd raised like £100,000, which for a lunch is amazing.
That is amazing. Well, as you can hear, it's going to take us a while to get through anything today.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. And you kind of I want to hear the stories, because actually a lot of the time people don't get to hear the stories, so it's really interesting to hear them. If you do have any questions and you'd like to hear any other stories, if you do know Jonny personally, for instance, and you want to stitch him up, then please do feel free to email studio@radiobath.com.
Richard, no. Valsy, ignore.
Another track just for Jonny then, 1985.
My favourite year.
Starship.
My favourite year.
Why is it your favourite year?
That was my first professional acting job in Nairobi, Kenya, where I was born, living with my big bro, which I'd never had a chance to do because he was 6 years older than me. So we lived together for about a year and a half. I actually got the job for 3 months, 3 plays. Didn't scratch the surface. Asked the director, the lovely James Falkland, if I could stay, and I ended up 15 months, did 17 plays, different one every 3 weeks. Amazing times.
Amazing. Right, we've got a couple of questions come in from somebody I believe you know. Okay, so they're not necessarily going to be...
I'm dreading this.
Yeah, it's not that bad. So the question says, how does Jonny overcome his crippling shyness, and has he always suffered from shyness? Best regards, Paul Mallon.
Yeah. I knew from that question. I instantly knew. Well, Paul Mallon's the reason I'm here. Paul Mallon is the father of my son Tommy's first ever girlfriend, and that's how we met. And despite the fact they're no longer together, Paul and I are still massive mates, and we now sit next to each other at the Rec every time Bath are playing, because I've sold 2 of my 4 season tickets to Paul and the lovely Emma. Emma's the one I feel sorry for. She deserves so much better.
Okay, well, he's got another one for you.
Oh, what a surprise.
He says, as an expert in the field, what make grooming products does he recommend? In particular, which orange tan and tooth whitening does he use?
Well, clearly not the one he uses. That's all I'm going to say.
So
I have never, ever, I'd like to say, used any kind of tanning cream. Ever.
Have you not?
No, it's all natural.
Just a natural
tan. I was born in
tan.
Kenya. I'm a Kenya boy. The sun comes out, I get a tan.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Do you know, I was in my barber's yesterday, and my barber is black. He's been on here before, John Chapter, brilliant barber, he really is. And his colleague stood next to him, also a black barber as well. And John's going off to Australia this weekend for 3 weeks. And the other barber turned around to him and went, "Are you going to work on your tan?" And I had to turn around and say, I could never say that joke. No. Whatever happens as a white person, I can't say that joke. But he was like, I can say it.
I interviewed Torrey Hunter, who for baseball fans will know, legendary Minnesota Twin, and he moved to the Angels, which of course is the LA Anaheim Angels, as in California. And he was the loveliest bloke. He was our all-time favourite when I was doing the show for Channel 5 for 12 years. And I asked him, excited about, your move from Minnesota, and he said, well, at least it gives me a chance to work on my tan.
Right.
And I completely missed it. And it was a great line, and he had to literally drag me back to it, and then I realised what he'd said, and I roared with laughter. So I've been down a similar route.
Yeah, thankfully I wasn't live on TV at the time. Now, we're going to go back a few years ago. For those that weren't, around or anything like that, there was this thing called COVID.
Yeah.
Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
And it kind of still...
Covers myself in glory.
Did you? In what way?
Oh, I just sat on the sofa and felt sorry for myself, put on weight, and could not believe that my whole working life had just collapsed around my ears, and I was truly pathetic. I'm ashamed to even think about it. I was very lucky to have the lovely Lula Bell, of course I do the show with, who was the exact opposite. She went and volunteered to make masks. She trained up to be a Samaritan. She did all this stuff, which she's still doing. And she's a complete and utter hero in my eyes, because she didn't allow it to drag her down to the level that I did, and she retained some positivity, and she did something really positive during those 18, 19 months. So I tip my hat to Lula Bell and all those like Lula Bell who were proactive, but I disappointed myself big time, because all I did was feel sorry for myself.
Do you know what, though? It's very difficult when you're in the performing arts, which effectively, as presenters on here and kind of what you're doing, you are in the performing arts, and it just got shut down. Certainly for me as a dance teacher, which is my normal role, I lost my identity as well. I didn't know what to do. I ended up becoming a delivery driver for a year because I had to pay the mortgage. But I kind of, I equally went in some dark places, and very similar to yourself, my wife dragged me out of it. And we ended up doing videos online for people, and I kind of came back around a little bit, but it took a while.
Yeah. Well, I was sitting, I think the lowest point I got was primarily because I've always been a very positive person my whole life. And as far as from my perspective, as long as I can see light at the end of a tunnel, I always retain a positive outlook. But I just couldn't. After months and months and months, I began to think, when's this ever going to end? And suddenly the light at the end of the tunnel had disappeared. And one particular night when I was feeling sorry for myself, I was sitting on the sofa with Lou, and she sort of asked, you okay? And I just said, I cannot see light at the end of the tunnel. And she just looked at me, and I'll never forget it. I mean, she is a superstar. And she just said, we've got each other, we've got our kids, and we've got our health. The rest is details.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, oh my God, she smacked that one out the park, the simplicity of that message, and she was absolutely right.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky. I had someone that, gave me a kick up the backside.
Yeah. And you had it, and you carried on afterwards.
Yes, celebrating our 15th anniversary on last Tuesday.
And can I ask, without too many details, if that's okay, what did you do?
Well, I first of all forgot that it was our anniversary.
Okay, that's gone down well. No wonder you're talking so positively today.
I then got asked to help out on a charity golf day by my friend Alan Lammy, who runs Rugby for Heroes, amazing charity. And said, can you come and play? He said, I don't want you to work, just come and play. I'd like, of course I will, mate, no problems. So I went to play, and then realised what I'd done. So I phoned up Lammy and said, look, I don't want to let you down because I've made a promise, I'll be there. But it was right up in Cheltenham. I said, but Lammy, as soon as the golf's over, I've got to go. I'm so sorry. I've never done this. I've never left a day early before the sit down and the awards and everything else. And I said, mate, please forgive me, but I've got to go. And I explained the situation. And I'd booked a table, and Lou and I went to the lovely Circus restaurant just around the back of where I live and around the back of the circus, and I sent her flowers while I was on the golf course. So hopefully, we had a really lovely evening. Actually, we had a really lovely evening.
Good.
So I think she's forgiven me.
You've got out of it.
Yeah,
basically.
I dug a big hole, but I got a JCB, and I think I got out of it.
And the big question then for me, because I know if mentally I'm not in the right place, my golf is horrific.
Yeah.
So how was your golf on that day? Because that's the most important question.
Well, it was pretty horrific, but thankfully you could buy mulligans whilst on the course.
Right.
It cost me £50, but it just kept my score vaguely sort of productive.
Okay.
But £50 later in mulligans, but supporting a good charity, so everyone's a winner. But I was playing in the same four ball as the potential future King of England, Mike Tyndall.
Right.
So obviously that was a bit distracting, to say the least. But trying to. Here's some interesting gossip for you. I asked him a question I've always wanted to ask him, which is, does the King, His Royal Highness, have a mobile?
Okay.
And apparently not. Apparently. And I said, well, how do you contact him? He said, I have the mobile number of his equerry, his sort of right-hand man, his number one. So if you need to get hold of him, you give him a call. Because I really wanted to know if he did. I know this is pathetic. What does he put him under? Is it just a picture of a crown? Is it Charlie Boy? I was really fascinated to know. But he did share with me that he's got William's mobile, Prince William's mobile.
Right.
And,
so William does have a mobile,
he does
but Charles not.
And in his mobile, it's under Big Willie.
Big Willie.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
You go.
Well, do you know what? Just on that, I've been into a number of teams, and I'm currently in a football team where there is somebody who's also called Richard, who is much taller than me, which isn't that difficult. So therefore, he is called Big Dick. I'll let you fill in the gaps.
This is a family show.
It is a family show, but it's not the first time that's happened to me. We're going to talk a little bit about some of your presentation stuff that you've done or presenting. Laureus World Sport Awards.
Yes.
How did you get that gig, and what was it like?
Well, I was super sub at Channel 5. When things were going well at Channel 5, I used to cover for other presenters when they couldn't do their shows, which is why I did MotoGP and Boxing Classics. I did NHL, NFL. I did Live and Dangerous, all sorts of shows. But I was always brought in as a super sub. And because I was deemed a safe pair of hands and I had a pretty good general knowledge of sport, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I love all sport. And so it was in that capacity that I was offered the role of presenting Channel 5's coverage of the Laureus World Sport Awards. And I got flown out. I think I did it 4 times, and I got flown out to all sorts of exotic locations. Monaco a couple of times, Lisbon. Amazing. And it's still going strong. I mean, Laureus Sport Awards is very well funded from its sponsors' perspective, and of course all the Academy members are the genuine superstar legends of sport. The Bobby Charltons of this world, the Usain Bolts of this world. You have to be an absolute true sporting icon to be asked. Daley Thompson, who by the way never turns up in a suit, so it's a black tie affair. He turns up in jeans and a t-shirt.
Does he?
He has never worn a suit in his life, apparently.
Okay, I wonder why. Because you're dressed very smart today. That's a lovely shirt.
Thank you.
And I'm here
make an effort.
in my t-shirt, but I'm obviously young. So there we go.
Younger.
That's good. Do you know, I've always wondered at which age. So I wear jeans.
Yes.
Okay, I turned 50 this year, and there seems to be, when you get to a certain point, that men don't wear jeans anymore and they change into slacks or chinos or whatever it may be. I don't know what age that is.
I think it's to do with the body. I mean, I'm not going to wear a tight t-shirt like you're wearing because you're all buff and toned. The minute it all starts to wobble in the wrong direction, you want to wear a shirt that's a little bit more forgiving and hides the fact that you haven't quite got the physique that you once had.
Right.
That's my argument.
Okay, what about the trousers though? So what? I didn't see what you've got jeans on. So you're still, and you're.
I think our generation of the jeans generation will be in jeans for the rest of our lives.
Right. So you don't think that because I know a number of people in there. I've got to say this really carefully, haven't I? In their mid-70s, let's go with that I'd never imagine wearing jeans. I can't imagine them wearing jeans.
I think we're fast getting to the point where everybody will be in jeans, regardless of their age. I have one bugbear which I want to share with you when it comes to fashion. If you're going to go to the theatre, particularly Theatre Royal, a classic theatre like that, it really annoys me when people turn up having made not only no effort, but zero effort.
Right.
I mean, as in, they've come so casual in a pair of flip-flops and shorts and stuff. Yeah. To me, my dad loved the theatre, we used to go a lot. If I'm going to a special occasion, if it's theatre, if it's opera, if it's ballet, I don't care, but it's special, then you make an effort. You dress smart.
On that, have you ever been, because you've been a lovey, you've been a theatre person and been on the stage.
Yes.
I'm talking in my deep voice for no good reason. Have you ever looked out and gone, they didn't make an effort?
No, but I didn't. Well, you got to remember, I gave up my acting career years ago, 1994.
And for all, for everybody, we thank you for that.
I'll tell you one funny story. My first job out in Kenya, in Nairobi, the theatre was tiny. It sat about 130 people, but the front row was literally right on the stage.
Yeah.
And the best actor I ever worked with, the funniest man, the lovely Jimmy Ward, he incredibly talented, rather trained. The people used to put their handbags on the stage.
Oh, wow.
And of course, to him, they'd broken the cardinal rule. They'd broken the barrier between stage. And he'd walk in total character, literally drop kick it off. I mean, I try to keep in character and not laugh, and he would drop people's sort of handbags and then look at them with this sort of willowing sort of look of disdain, which I used to love. But that to me was the wonderful sort of implosion of why I love live theatre, because there's that sort of barrier where you're not quite sure, is it the stage, is it the act, or is it the audience?
Well, I've got a song lined up for you now.
Okay.
Guess what song I'm going to play? Okay. Go on, you've got millions and millions of songs, okay? So, guess which artist? Let's go with there.
Guess which artist? Neil Diamond. Yes!
Where it began, I can't begin to knowing, but then I know it's growing strong. Wasn't the spring, and spring became the summer. Who'd have believed you'd come along?
Back with Jonny Gould, then. It's Richard Beauvoisin here until midday today, chatting away. It literally just feels like we're chatting in the pub, doesn't it?
As it should do.
As it should do, which is quite nice. Now, we've spoken about some of your presenting stuff. You did mention about doing quizzes on Channel 5. Now, we did touch on this briefly when you were back in August.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Lifelong ambition. I love a quiz. Bob Barker from the American show of The Price is Right is one of my three greatest heroes. I just thought he was so awesome at what he did, and I used to just love watching, and have done my whole life. I'm still an avid watcher of any kind of a TV game show. So being a host of one was absolutely on the cards as my to-do list.
Yeah.
And I got very lucky. I got to present Memory Bank on Channel 5 for a year.
And how successful was that, Jonny?
Well, it lasted a year.
That
should tell you everything you need to know. But obviously I didn't do too badly, because then they put me on their very successful game show, Brain Teaser.
Okay, now that I've heard of.
You've heard of Brain Teaser?
Yeah, I have.
Well, my friends refer to it as Brain Dead, but there you go.
Right.
And unfortunately, after a year of doing that, and I was doing it whilst I was still doing the baseball show, and it'd be a week on, a week off. So I'd do the baseball show twice a week through the night, and if it was the week that I was on, I would then go straight from the studio of the baseball and get a train to Bristol, and I'd be in rehearsals and on air live at about 1:32, having not had any sleep at all. So it would be like a 30 to 40 hour day by the time I finished. So I'd be falling asleep in the makeup chair, for instance, and I would be consuming vast amounts of Coca-Cola and coffee just to try and stay awake. And it was live, Richard.
Yeah.
Now, you showed me a game show that's on TV now or in the past that was live. It's literally unheard of, for a reason, because you've got to fit it into that exact spot. And so that was really challenging. So from a purely presenting perspective, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a really good programme as well.
Okay.
The bit I hated about it was that they funded it by getting people to phone in and enter a competition. And I wasn't very good at that, because I hated that. That was basically their way of, Endemol made it was their way of funding it to their fee, and they gave a small percentage of it to Channel 5. So basically it was a freebie for Channel 5. And it was a really good programme. I can't believe they couldn't have sold advertising and funded it that way. And I hated the idea of, trying to convince some granny who's watching to spend £5 on a really expensive phone call, and unfortunately I wasn't very good at it, that part of it, and that was obviously quite a key part. And after a year they decided that having two different presenters, they wanted to go with just one, and they made the right decision. They went with the other presenter, because she was actually really good at getting people to phone in, which I wasn't, but my heart wasn't in it.
No.
But about a year something later, they went under, having received the biggest fine in the history the sort of, the people whose job it is to keep an eye and make sure that things are done properly, because they hadn't actually done that much wrong, but basically because it was live, they used to get very nervous about somebody talking beyond the point of coming off air.
Yeah.
And they had a winner who happened to be very elderly and rather slow, and they panicked, and so she won the prize, but instead of being her on the phone saying, "Oh, this is wonderful," they got one of the producers to go on the phone saying, "This is wonderful," just to make sure they got off air. So she did get the money. They didn't do anything underhand in that respect.
Okay.
She won her prize, but the deception of that was the winner when it wasn't. It was a member of the production team, and they got fined the largest fine, I believe, in the history of TV, and the programme, and needless to say, went off air.
Just like that.
That's what happened when you get rid of Jonny Gould, you see.
Well, there
Those
you go.
are the things that... Johnny the Jinx.
Do you know what? Now, I know you can't see it because it's radio, okay, but one of the pictures, last time you were on, I got loads of quite amusing pictures of you, if I'm honest with you, and put them all out.
That's not the word I'd use.
This time, I thought, I'll make it a quality picture. So it's a picture of you holding onto a microphone, doing your auctioneering, which we're going to talk about shortly. But I'll be honest, I looked at it and thought it looks like you're being a crooner.
Well, it's always been something that I've considered doing.
But going back to that, do you ever look at the current game show hosts and go, A, I could do better than that, and B, what's their technique like? Are they any good?
Yes. There's a couple I'm not fans of.
Okay.
I think Stephen Mulhern's very good on catchphrase, but I would say that because I do the voiceover.
You do.
But he's genuinely very good, and he's a lovely man. I think Richard Osman's excellent.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Richard Osman. No, there's a few out there that I genuinely cannot understand how they've got the job, but there you go. That's
they
the nature
have
of the business.
Got the job.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things that you used to do was see Sir Steve Redgrave's Golden 5 Golf Tour. What a name that is.
Yes.
Blimey, what's that all about?
Well, he won 5 gold medals at 5 Olympics, and he decided when he quit, after I think it was the Sydney Olympics, that he was going to spend 5 years raising £5 million for a number of amazing charities.
Okay.
And Channel 5 covered it. The obvious connection, 5, and the guy that was presenting it, that did the first couple, couldn't do the third one, the Celtic Manor, so they called me in, super sub. I went and did it, really enjoyed it, walking the course, interviewing loads of celebrities, and obviously Sir Steve, who I hadn't met at that point, and the chaps that ran it were then having a discussion in the office after the day about the dinner that they had on the back of it, and suddenly, well, who's going to do the auction? And I'd already started auctioneering at that point, and I heard them say it, and I went, well, guys, I do an auction, and I'm not going to be doing anything during the dinner. My cameraman's going to be filming, but I'm going to be sitting there just twiddling my thumbs. If you want me to do it, I'm more than happy to do it.
Yeah.
And they went, that would be amazing. Thank you so much for offering. And obviously I was thinking, well, if I do this well, then I may end up getting some work out of it. And it went unbelievably well. I'm very happy to say. And they turned around and said, would you do all of ours? And I said, well, if I do all of yours, I'll need to present all of the shows on.
Just like that.
So they went to Channel 5.
Forever the salesman.
Yeah, well, I just thought it was a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And so they went to Channel 5 and said, we want Johnny to be the presenter for the rest. And I did it for another 4+ years. I went to La Manga every year for the big finals of the competition, and absolutely loved it. And so Steve is just a wonderful human being.
I was going to say, I often have the scenario of trying never to meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Because they may disappoint.
Oh, I've been spoiled.
But so you say Steve Redgrave is a
100%, yeah. And Matthew Pinson, who I always really feel sorry for Matthew. He won 4 gold medals, and yet because he was best mates with Steve, who won 5, he's like, and also ran. The man won 4 gold medals in 4 Olympics. That gives him iconic status, and yet I use it every time he's in an auction. I give it, you must be sitting there, twisty and bitter to the core, and he loves it. He's really into it. He always never takes offence, but I do. No, I've been very spoiled. My childhood hero was Peter Bonetti, because I was a Chelsea fan.
Yeah.
I had the full cat outfit, and I met his daughter at drama school.
Right.
How exciting was that? She suddenly became the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life, because that's how superficial I am. And I went up and said hello. And
Still loves Lulu, by the way.
Of course, yes. This was 1983. This is a fair few years ago. And the lovely Suzanne. I spent months trying to date her. Finally succeeded, and did something I've never done in any relationship in my life. I immediately said, I'd love to meet your family.
Of course,
I'd love to meet your parents. And so she introduced me to her dad, and he took me to a League Cup quarter-final at the Bridge. I sat next to my childhood hero watching a game of football for my team,
Okay.
and he was the loveliest man. And so this whole Never Meet Your Heroes could not have been more wrong. I absolutely loved Peter Bonetti. What a nice, genuine human being. And when I used to do Chelsea pitch owners and Chelsea events, I did loads with Chelsea from a emceeing and an auctioneering perspective. If Peter was ever in the crowd, I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Jonny Gould, hardcore Chelsea fan. I've got my Chelsea boxers on. I said I dated Peter Bonetti's daughter, and then Peter and I go, Peter, we just held hands. That's all we did. We just held.
Of course,
like,
that's
that better be
did.
true. And it was true.
Of course, it was.
True.
Yes,
it was completely true. I literally, because I was off to Africa, and I knew I was off to Africa, so I knew the relationship was going to end. So I was the perfectly behaved boyfriend, and I met up with Suzanne 25 years later and apologised and explained why basically I'd been this pathetic boyfriend that only held her hand. And she said, I'm so glad you're telling me this story, Jonny. For 25 years I've told anyone that's been interested that you're clearly homosexual.
Of course. Yeah, which I cannot comment on.
That was yes, but we're still mates. And sadly we've lost Peter now.
Yes.
Peter passed away a few years ago, but what a lovely man.
Now, back in the day, Chelsea Football Club, my best mate, who just turned 50, actually, happy birthday to him, he turned 50 on Monday, and we travelled into London when we were 13 years old. So this is in the mid-80s, okay? And he was like, I want to go to Stamford Bridge. I was like, all right, let's go to Stamford Bridge. We got on the tube, we went in, and yeah, back in those days, you could just walk into the stadium.
Yeah.
And we walked into the stadium. We went up the West Stand, which at that time was, I don't know if it is still the big stand or not.
It is, yeah.
And we went up the top tier.
Almost bankrupted the club.
Yeah, we went up the top tier, and I felt like I was having to crawl up. It's that steep.
Yeah.
We came down into the bit behind the seats, and we walked around a little bit, and who's the old chairman? Ken Bates.
Ken Bates.
He walked past us. Didn't say a thing. 2 13-year-old lads just wandering around the stadium, and it's perfectly normal to do back in those days. These days, it's a little bit locked up. You can't get in there.
I had to do an interview with him for London Tonight, live interview.
Right.
And the previous sports presenter they'd been using that week live for London Tonight had overrun into the news and into slots that they shouldn't have done. So the news editor was furious and said, right, your next live, the sports department, it does not overrun. If it does, it's going to be heads will roll.
Yeah.
So my producer said, right, we're sending you down to the bridge to interview Ken Bates, and he said, if you overrun by 1 second, you're out of a job, because I was only a freelancer.
Right.
I'm like, oh, right, okay, that seemed a bit harsh, but not really. He said, do you understand you cannot? And he said, look, he's a bit of a difficult character, and I'd never met him, but I knew he was.
Yeah.
And he said, so, make yourself known to him. So I did, and I introduced myself, and I said, we've got 2.5 minutes, Ken, and blah, and oh, by the way, I'm a Chelsea fan. And he goes, oh, what, you started supporting us now that we're winning stuff? And no, I've been supporting since I was 5, desperately trying to justify my credentials, and he wasn't having anything of it. So suddenly I get a message, as always happens, they've overrun on something else. Right, you haven't got 2.5 minutes, you've only got 1.5. I'm like, oh, I've got to tell Ken now, we've cut a minute from his slot. And he was basically there to advertise the fact that they've just launched their own website, their own radio station, their own TV station, and basically it came to the live. He was obviously now in a really bad mood, and I did my piece of camera, absolutely nailed it, turned into shot, got the camera over there, everything went absolutely perfectly well. And I said, so tell me about it, Ken, new radio station, is this a bit overkill? And he goes, no, not at all. In fact, now that I've got my own TV station, I don't need people like you, and pushed me out of shot and walked up to the camera.
Wow.
And did a full 1.5 minutes with me terrified I was about to lose my job, and literally with 5 seconds to go I pushed him out of shot and said, that's Ken Bates, back to the studio.
And talking about back to the studio, it's time for the news. Now, much to Johnny's dislike, we have played a modern song.
It's a good song.
It is Gwen Stefani's Somebody Else's. That is a new one, which is all good. It's Richard Beauvoisin here until midday, talking today with Jonny Gould, fellow Radio Bars presenter, talking all about his life and the different parts that he does. We're going to talk about auctioneering now.
Right, yes.
Which is now effectively your job.
It is, yes.
Do you consider it a real job?
Yes and no.
Because presenting is not a real job, is it? You just sit there and chat to people. It's not a real job.
What's your definition of a real job? Something you hate? I mean, I'm very lucky. Everything I've ever done, I love. And I would always encourage anybody to pursue what they love.
No, you're absolutely right.
It doesn't feel like a job.
I'm a dance teacher. I have the pleasure of dancing sometimes up to 8 hours a day, and I'm very fortunate in that, and I do love it. Although my body sometimes says, you might be getting a bit old for this, but there we go. That's why
might be
getting a bit old, yeah. But that's why I have staff. Back in 1997 then, you started being an auctioneer? How did it all start?
I didn't intend to.
Okay.
I didn't intend to. I'd never been in an auction house in my life. I used to go on an indoor cricket tour with my mates. Richard Thompson, who's now the chairman of the ECB, would you believe, who I'd met at Croydon Cable.
You still seem flabbergasted by that.
I am flabbergasted. He was my cricket correspondent.
Right.
He was a computer nerd.
Okay.
But he was a sponsor of Surrey players, and he persuaded me to make him, and he's a very entertaining guy, so he was a brilliant cricket correspondent. You know, he was the guy that he lived in the local area and everything, and he got players down. He was totally true to his word because he sponsored a whole host of players, so I got to be mates with these players, the likes of Martin Bicknell, Darren Bicknell, Butch and Sauls and Lordy, Ali Brown, all the great team of the late 90s, early 2000s of Surrey when they were winning everything. And we used to go on an indoor cricket tour every February to Jersey, and I did introduce my best mate Jonny Maitland to them, and he'd come, and Foxy, who was best mate of Tom Overwood. So it was about 6 of us plus maybe one Surrey extra player, but it was always Brownie and always Bickers. And in '97 they decided to launch Martin's benefit year. He'd been awarded benefit by Surrey, and they said, let's launch it when we're on tour. And I was like, what? That's a crazy idea. I said, what do you mean launch it? So, well, we'll bring a couple of lots and we'll sell them. And I said, but we play with kids. We play with teenagers who've got no money.
Yeah.
So how do you expect to raise any money? Well, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I said, okay, fine, boys, crack on. So, of course, we had this amazing tour. We never go to sleep. It was an absolute scene 4 days of doing everything except play cricket. And we went to the pub for the awards. Half the people in the pub weren't even a part of the awards, and the two of them were getting out this signed England shirt and jumper. He only played for England 4 times at this point.
Yeah.
So this was one of 4 that he was auctioneering
back
off.
in those days, that's quite a normal thing, though, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, and it's a disgrace because Martin was one of the best bowlers of that era. So how he only got 4 tests to this day, absolute disgrace. But anyway, the two of them were taken out, and then suddenly Martin goes, "Who's going to do the auction?" They hadn't even thought about it. So I started laughing because I thought it was like the Keystone Cops, and then Bickers goes, "Well, Gould, you're on TV, you do it."
Right.
And I'm like, what's TV presenting got to do with doing an auction? But I thought, if I don't, who else is going to? So I ended up standing on the bar in Jersey and saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, can I get your attention?" And literally half these old Jersey old timers with their pints, and they're like, "Who the hell's this? You know, what on earth is he doing?" And it was all my worst fears because basically no one had any money and no one bid. So I asked for 50 quid. The frame cost 100.
Okay.
And I'm asking for 50 quid, opening bid. Couldn't get a single bid. I looked at the floor, literally tumbleweed rolling in front of me. I mean, one of those moments where you just want the world to open up and swallow.
Yeah.
And out of desperation, I just started taking the mick and being rude. And basically said, "I'm not surprised nobody wants to bid. You know, he's a pretty awful cricketer." And people started laughing. He only won 4 test caps, you know. And the minute they started to laugh, they started to bid, which was really bizarre. And I ended up selling both items for 250 quid, which is pathetic, but under the circumstances was a miracle. And Bickers was very kind and said, "Goldie, that was amazing. Do you want to do all my auctions?" And basically he said that he would pay me a minimal sum, and I'd get invited to all these amazing events. And I thought, well, that sounds fun. And literally, that's how it started. And I then started to think about it and the dynamics of it and what can I do to enhance the performance.
Yeah.
And then the following year, the next Surrey beneficiary asked me to do his. And literally, I did 9 straight years as Surrey beneficiary. But that was all I was doing. It was just a sideline, just a bit of fun. But then I got to do Alex Stewart's testimonial. Lord McLaurin, the former CEO of Tesco, I think it was.
Okay.
He was the chairman. This is a well-connected man who lives locally, by the way.
Okay.
Lord McLaurin with his lovely wife. And he obviously brought in some big hitters, corporate and charities, and I was getting seen and performing, and people were coming up going, "Wow, never seen an auction like it," because obviously most auctions they just get somebody from Bonhams and it's terribly boring, and obviously that was my plan, was make sure it wasn't boring, it was entertaining.
So you are different.
Oh, I think you ask anybody. Yeah, I'm very different to the norm.
Now I've been a dance teacher for a long time, and I do something called a beginner's day. So we get bunch of beginners in and we teach them how to dance again. There's normally about 50 people in the room, and it's a really lovely afternoon for 3 hours, and I have the same person up on the stage with me, the amazing Dot, who was in here. Catch up on the podcast if you haven't listened back to that one. And she's an incredible woman, but she's heard my script so many times now because I kind of it's the same moves and I do the same jokes, and she still laughs. Bless them. And obviously all the beginners are new, so for them it's always the first time.
Yes, of course.
For yourself though, are you kind of doing the same script when you're
100%.
doing your auctions? How do you feel? Because, like, in your head, you're going, God, have I done this one yet again?
Richard, I've done it 27 years,
Right.
and the script is pretty much the same. And I've been very lucky. I've worked with Martin Bayfield, who in many people's eyes is the best MC on the circuit, the former England rugby player. And Bayf used to phone me up on a regular basis to discuss this very issue, basically saying, I'm worried about getting stale, Gouldy. And I had exactly the same thoughts, because this is, there's only so many stories he's got to tell, and I'm not a scriptwriter, so coming up with new lines is not what I do. And we both had that same discussion, and in the end, we realised after numerous counselling sessions together that basically, as long as you perform it as if it's the first time you've ever said it, people who've heard it 50 times still laugh.
Yeah.
And it's exactly why, if you watch Eric Morecambe and Wise, even though you've seen the show 100 times, you still laugh. Because one, it's genuinely funny, and two, they're performing it as if it's the first time, because it was the first time when they performed it. And you must never lose sight of that.
Yeah.
That sometimes there's almost like a comfort blanket for people who've been and seen me do 40, 50 auctions. They're waiting for certain lines because they're lines they love. So you must never lose sight of the fact that it's all about your own mental approach, that if you do it as if it's for the first time, regardless of how many hundreds of times people have heard it before. I
have it in Dirty Dancing. Okay, so Patrick,
my favourite movie,
the only movie that exists, except
100%.
for Queen of Sheba, of course. Patrick Swayze at the very end of it says he has the tradition, he always does the last dance.
Yeah.
And that's really important. And for me, for the last 25 years of teaching, the last move that I teach in a year has always been the same move, okay, which is a terrible dance move. And it's the only time we ever do it in the year. Nobody ever danced elsewhere. I say the same joke every single year, and I love it. I look forward to it, and I have people coming up a month before going, "Are you doing the move?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Are you doing the same joke?" Yeah. And they turn up in droves to hear the same joke they've heard for the last 25 years.
Well, it's a comfort blanket.
It's it's fun.
I've never quite latched onto the same line. I've got a few that I do every time. One is chaos, panic, and disorder. My work here is done. That was one I used to use. Another one that I'm using now, particularly with the modern world that we live in, is I do this whole thing about saying, look, guys, the world has changed, and it's really important for me personally that I clarify if anything I have said today has caused offence. Please, please, please know that obviously it was totally intentional. My name's Jonny Gould. Thank you, and good night. That's my go-to now. That's
fair enough. I've done something very similar, and that I give the email address. If you email don'tcare@srock.com. So that's my other one.
That's your go-to.
On the same joke. Why are you called the poster boy failure, though?
Well, it's self-proclaimed.
Right.
It's because I was. I mean, my acting career really, truly was spectacularly unsuccessful, and then my TV career. I mean, when you're discussing, and I loved it. I didn't want anybody to ever think I didn't. It was the best 12 years of my life. But when the highlight of your presenting career is a show that's on a sport that very few British people have any interest in whatsoever, at a time when everyone's awake. When everyone's asleep, you can hardly claim that if you're presenting a TV show on a bizarre American sport until 5 a.m. that you've had a phenomenal career. So to me, it was just I'm just comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that whole.
Are you hoping to get back into TV presenting?
I've not totally given up on it, but I'm of a certain age. I had a really good run. I have no regrets in that respect. I was literally doing something for 20 years, which by most people's standards, it's a difficult industry. I mean, my dad gave me a hard time the first time he ever watched. I told him I'd got this Greyhound show on Live TV. I don't know if you remember Live TV, really dodgy TV channel.
Sure.
You remember it had the weather in Norwegian, had a dwarf on a trampoline jumping up and down to point at the weather map. I mean, really dodgy.
Okay.
Really dodgy stuff, which obviously you'd never get away with now.
Not so much.
Rightly so. And I did a Greyhound show called Dog Night Live, and I was told it was the second most watched show on Live TV. I was really proud of it. And it was a live Greyhound show, and Greyhound
so 4 people watched it?
Oh, no, it had a really good following.
Really? Okay.
But it was the second most watched show on Live TV.
So obviously the question that you wanted me to ask you is, what was the first most watched
Thank you
question?
for picking up that
That's
baton.
okay, it's okay. Back to you.
Topless dolls.
Of course. Why else?
So that sort of put in perspective my excitement and my pride.
My question, though, was it men doing the darts still? Because they're quite large lads. So
yeah, it was a combination of both, I believe.
Okay,
a combination of both. Yeah, so no, it was a very dodgy channel. But I tell my dad, I've got this gig, Dad. I'm doing this Greyhound show. So of course he set the recorder, and in those days, because this was the 90s, recorders would always, if you remember, they used to start about a minute before the show. So my dad saw what was on the minute before, and it was all, young ladies in various states of undress.
Okay.
And he wrote me this long letter about, you can't be that desperate for a job, and you really need to think about your image. And really critical letter.
Right.
I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, Dad, have you got any idea how tough it is to get a gig in
Absolutely.
television? And sadly, for him, because he was old school, and I respect that hugely, but for him, the image of being involved on live TV because of what the other output.
Yeah.
But my girlfriend at the time was the senior producer at live TV, so I was well and truly sort of ensconced in the mire that was live TV. But it's all harmless fun.
Well, we're going to find out much more about Jonny, auctioneering, and some of the different people he's met as well. And he's going to do the quick fire round today. Lots coming up before midday with Jonny Gould. There's Savage Garden, Truly Madly Deeply even. Jonny, why do we play that track?
We played that track for my Lullaby, 15 years together. That's on Tuesday. And that's the song that I think of.
You are still making up for playing golf on your anniversary, aren't you?
So I am.
Let's face it. Now, before the break, we were talking about you being an auctioneer. Again, when I was looking at a variety of things on social media about you, you went to Hong Kong for the Doddle Weir Foundation. Tell us about that.
I've been twice. Went this year and went pre-COVID. The pre-COVID, the first time was amazing because Doddy was still with us. Much loved hero, as we all know from the not just as a rugby player, but more importantly his struggles with MND and what he did to heighten. He started that whole journey that Rob Burrows picked up, and Ed Slater and all the other rugby players with this horrific disease. And the first one, which I was asked out to do the auction, the crowd didn't know that the number one guest was going to be Billy Connolly, who was there with his wife Pamela Stevenson.
Billy!
Yeah.
That was my terrible impression.
Well, the big man was everything you could expect. I mean, the two of them got on like a house on fire. And when they walked into the room, this amazing room and this amazing venue in Hong Kong, the genuine shock and surprise and joy when people saw these two people they loved so much. And everyone just stood up, standing ovation. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. Andy Nicol, the Scotland scrum half, lovely, lovely man. He interviewed Billy, and it was a wonderful interview. And even though he's got all his own health issues, he was still sharp as a tack and had everybody in absolute fits of laughter. What an absolute legend that man is. For my money, the greatest stand-up ever. I saw him in Washington.
He can tell
DC.
a story.
Oh, I had to leave at half time because literally, all my muscles in my stomach were so sore because I'd laughed so hard for the first half of his stand-up in Washington DC, 1987.
Blimey.
There you go.
You've been places, haven't you? Blimey.
Well, I lived in Washington. My girlfriend that I'd met in Africa, who was an actress, inspired me.
Sorry to interrupt you. Every single story seems to go with my girlfriend.
Well, the only thing you need to know about my girlfriend, and I'm hoping Lou doesn't know this, is that every single girl that's dumped me has gone on to superstardom and greatness. That seems to be the sort of, the formula for success.
Okay.
But thankfully, I'm still very good mates with most of them.
So do you feel like you've been their stepping stone?
Well, they've definitely stepped on me to get to
You've been their introduction into the world of celebrities, and then they've gone on to do more.
I've only realised in recent years the connection. I've sort of, my first love when I was 14, she is married to Sir Patrick Vallance.
Right.
Patrick, who's now in the cabinet.
Next slide, please.
No, the guy that was always appearing during COVID.
Yeah.
The government.
Whenever I think of Patrick Vallance, I always think of the other chap who always went, next slide, please.
Oh, right.
So it was always always three of them weren't there.
Yes, that's right.
And he was the expert.
So Sir Patrick, who's now been knighted, that he's married to my first ever girlfriend, the lovely Sophie Dexter.
Wow. There you go. Now, Paul has messaged in again. I'm not sure.
Mellon.
Paul,
why are we giving him airtime?
I'm not really sure if I'm honest, but it's quite amusing. I'm not sure there's a question here, but he says, if Jonny was acting in a movie and it was absolutely necessary for the integrity of the plot, even though it clearly goes against every fibre of his being, would he ever consider name-dropping, ouch my toe, there goes another, it's why he wears metal toe cap boots at the rugby? So I think what Paul is getting at there, very subtly, is that you might do the odd name drop. Would that be a fair thing to say?
I like to tell a good story.
Right.
And if the good story involves someone, I mean, how do you tell the story without telling them who that person is?
Like Billy Connolly, for instance.
Exactly. You asked the question.
I did ask the question. Now, the reason I'm asking this is that I've had the pleasure, via the medium of Radio Bath recently, very luckily, to interview quite a lot of celebrities, which has been lovely. And the one thing which I found out, and this is really I thought it was quite weird, is they're all normal. To some degree.
If you treat them normally.
Yeah. But then somebody said to me, oh, but you think they're normal because you're not normal. And I went, what do you mean by that? And they went, well, you're on stage as your normal thing. You're on the radio as your normal thing. So therefore, talking to somebody else that's in the presenting world or doing acting or dancing, that is quite normal for you. But for everybody else, it's not. So for yourself, you've been a radio Channel 5 presenter and auctioneer and variety bits and pieces. So is that why you feel that you can kind of mix with these people in a normal level, because you're not normal, Jonny? Sorry, I've just realised how that came across. You're not normal, Jonny.
Okay, here's my theory on it.
Go on then.
Okay, my theory on it is that, one, I was never of a status that anybody would ever take me seriously. So when I was interviewing at Channel 5, it was Channel 5. Well, Channel 5 is at the back of the queue compared to the BBC and Sky and, ITV, etc., etc. So that was a massive help to start with. And two, on a personal level, I think the more normal you are in terms of just talking to somebody in a normal way, you discover whether they're vaguely normal. And the vast majority of celebrities, whatever that means, are very normal people who just happen to be very good at something, for the vast majority. And if you could connect with them as you would do with a normal person, but also respect the boundaries. What terrifies me is I did another job in Hong Kong for Jonny Wilkinson, and of course he's literally the most famous English rugby player ever, and this was when he was in his prime and he was running a number of events. He had a testimonial raising money for amazing charities, and we went to Hong Kong, had this incredible night, and we ended, and it raised hundreds of thousands. I mean, it was amazing the money that was raised, and then we all ended up going out for a drink, and he had a few of his mates. He had Richard Hill, Martin Johnson, Ben Kay was there, so it's a big name.
Yeah, big rugby
and
name.
They said, right, we're all going out for a drink, you coming, Goldie? I'm like, yeah, I think I might,
Were you concerned at that point about keeping up?
Oh, 100%.
Because rugby players are renowned for having the odd drink or two.
Yes. Oh, no, and I'm
big
pathetic
guys.
on that front. So,
right.
100%. But also I ended up doing was being a minder, because what astounded me was how people got very excited, particularly when they saw Martin Johnson and Jonny Wilkinson, and they'd come up and get the selfies. And, of course, being rugby players, they're wonderful. They always engage. They always are polite and everything. But then people overstep the boundaries. They don't realise that, look, they're here with their mates. That's what they want to do.
Yeah.
They've given you the photo. They've given you the autograph. They've chatted with you for a couple of minutes. Now say, look, it's a great pleasure, and move away. And they don't. They can't believe it, and they don't. They lose all perception of what's the done thing. So I ended up being like the minder, where I'd drag people. I go, Wilco, there's somebody who needs to talk to you over here, and I dragged them away. And I would literally that was my role for the whole night. But it was a real eye-opener for me, that in terms of how you behave around anybody of stature, in whatever world, whether it be a Lorraine, former mayor of Bath, the people that act as normally as possible are the ones that have a normal connection.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you also have to be respectful of the fact that some people don't live a normal world. They don't live a normal life. No. They live an abnormal life because of the success. And I, from my experience, it's a real eye-opener when you meet somebody who clearly has lost all perception. Just because you're famous, you behave in a way which is just completely unacceptable, and your family wouldn't be particularly proud of you right now. And yet there are some. I mean, I'll very quickly tell you a story. Austin Healey, the rugby player, has got a terrible reputation. He's been, well, they all think he's arrogant, but lots of people think he's arrogant and this and that. And he's a bit of a brat boy. That's been his image, and all the rugby players, take the mick, but they all love him. Right. But the truth is they all love him, even though they all take the mick. And I can tell you from personal experience, I worked for Austin. I'd never met him before. He put me on his top table for his lunch, his Christmas lunch, and I was in the middle of my divorce. It was the worst time of my life. I was in the darkest of places. And he said to me, "Are you okay?" He connected with me, somebody he'd never met before. And I said, "Look, I'm so sorry, Austin. I'm just going through a really tough time." And he said, "Tell me about it." And literally for 45 minutes, I unleashed on a man I'd never even met before, even though I knew. and he was my client. I was working for him, and he was so kind, and he listened, and he offered some advice. So by the time I went up to the auction, so many of these troubles were off my chest. Smashed the auction out the park, went unbelievably well, really thrilled. And on my way home, I get a text message from him saying, "Can't thank you enough. What an amazing job you did for me today." And then he just said, "Look, mate, I know you're going through some really tough times, and sometimes just having somebody who's willing to listen is all you need. You've got my mobile." I'd only just met him, Richard.
Yeah.
I'd only just met the man, and he showed me such unbelievable kindness. There's a man who has an image as a celebrity. The reality couldn't be more different. He is the most wonderful human being who truly cares. Great dad, great husband, great man.
And on the other flip side of that, obviously not giving any names whatsoever, are there people that you've met that have an amazing public image that might not be quite so nice behind the scenes? Your face there was like, I cannot believe you're going down this route.
I'm not a big fan of Tom Jones.
Okay.
I did an event. He was meant to do a meet and greet, and in the middle of the auction I had to withdraw the lot because he decided he didn't want to do the meet and greet.
Wow.
And he was paying a lot of money. I then was backstage having just done the auction, and I thought, I'll just take a photograph. He was waiting to go on, and his manager came up, put his hand in my face, and no picture. And I'm like, what? All I was doing was taking a selfie of a man standing there. So I wasn't impressed by that at all.
Okay.
I had a horrible run-in with Tiger Woods.
Right.
So I'm not a big Tiger Woods fan. But I think most people accept that, pre him realising that he needed to change his life, he wasn't a particularly nice person.
Yeah.
I had a really bad interaction with him, and I thought he was awful. So, so, I mean, there's a couple of more.
There are some. I mean, Tiger Woods has a variable reputation at the best of times.
Yes.
So that's not a surprise. And, I wonder with Tom whether he's just done it for so long that he's just had enough of it.
We also, I think, to be fair to him, you've got to be careful, because sometimes I wonder whether it's his management and agency that's the issue, not the person. But I think as the person, you need to be on top of that. You need to have the right people around you. I mean, Tony Hadley, okay, he's not as big as Tom Jones, but he's still pretty massive.
Yeah.
And he's the loveliest human being with everyone. And even when it's abundantly clear he really doesn't want the hassle, he's always polite, he's always kind, he's always smiling. He does the selfies, he does the photographs, he engages every time. And I don't think it's difficult. It's just manners, the way you're brought up.
It is. I mean, we were chatting off air about the fact that one of my best mates is Eddie the Eagle, and he's actually a fantastic, lovely guy. Yeah. And the one weird thing is that if you're out on the golf course with him, which is what I normally am, and people come up and see him, the people that are around him just become completely and utterly invisible.
Yeah.
Nobody else exists because that person just comes over.
But that's an example. That's not normal behaviour. If you went up and said hello to somebody, a normal person would introduce themselves to everybody, not just the person they want to say hello to.
Absolutely.
So they've lost touch with normality, and that's my point.
Yeah.
Just be normal.
Yeah.
Just apply the same rules of respect and kindness and friendliness, and the same manners.
Yeah.
And it's not difficult.
But I have to say, Mike deals it incredibly well. He does all the selfies, and Mike, sorry, I know him as Mike. His name's Mike Edwards, so
I don't know if many people know that.
I know. Everybody goes Eddie, and he answers to both. He doesn't care. He really doesn't care. But I just know him as Mike. He's just a normal bloke. Just happened to jump off a ski jump a few years ago.
No one can be called normal who's half blind and goes down a ski jump. I think people have a lot of love for Eddie the Eagle because the courage to do what he did was extraordinary.
Do you know what? He is the most normal, exceptional person I know.
Yeah.
Let's go down that route. And on that note, it's quick fire time for you next, Johnny.
Okay.
You have no idea what's coming up for that, have you?
Looking forward to this.
We'll find out. Picturing Elvis as well?
I am. I loved Elvis.
Yeah.
I did an impersonation of Elvis on a skiing holiday.
Did you?
And with my brothers doing it. It was Teddy Bear doing the Bob Shawada in the background.
Okay.
And we won. We won it's one of the greatest moments of my life.
Did people thank you very much?
Well, the next day, I was skiing with a full balaclava and helmet and stuff, and so, you couldn't see my face, and I ended up at a drag lift, and there were two girls in front of me, and we were queuing to get on the drag lift, and this girl goes, "So what you do last night, Shell?" And she said, "Oh, nothing much. We went out, we had a drink, we went to a bar." But there was a talent show on, so of course my ears picked up.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, right, any good?" No. She said, although, the act that won, right, okay, it's this bloke doing an Elvis impersonation.
Was she from up north?
She was, yes.
Yeah.
And she goes, yeah, any good? She went, I tell you what, Shell, seriously, I closed my eyes. I thought it was Elvis. It was the greatest moment of my life.
How much have you lived off that story?
Haven't told it for a while, so thank you for giving me the opportunity.
That's okay. Right, we're on to your quick fire round, which you have no idea what these questions are.
Yes,
I know you're a regular listener to the show, so you know all of them before, honest gov. So, your favourite... I normally I let people know this one, but I haven't even let you know the first question. So, What is your favourite ice cream?
Chocolate.
Chocolate. Any particular brand or any particular type? Just simply chocolate.
What's the one in Bath? The one that's near
yes.
Bog Island.
I can see it at the top.
I can't remember the name of it, but Italian. Lovely.
Very good. Are you tidy or messy?
Unbelievably tidy.
Unbelievably tidy.
Okay. Annoyingly tidy. Yeah.
Okay. So my follow-up question to that is, if we opened up your cupboards, are all the labels round the right way?
You open up my cupboards, you'll find that I used to have colour-coordinated hangers for my shirts and stuff. So,
what about your food cupboard, ideally?
Oh, we're talking food cupboard?
Food cupboard.
Oh, yeah. No, immaculate.
So all the labels round the right way?
Oh, not quite that. No. Not in the food cupboard. No. But in the fridge, I tend to put the labels like all my beer bottles and stuff. They always tend. Yeah, no. Okay. No, my son calls me an OCD all the time.
Yeah. So
and I keep saying to him, "Do you know?" The first time he said it, he was only 9, and he said, "Oh, you've got OCD, Dad." And I went, "Well, do you know what OCD stands for?" And he said, "Yes, obsessive cleaning disorder." Okay, mate. Well, it isn't actually.
If you were doing it properly, it'd be called CDO, by the way, because that'd be it in the right order.
In the right order.
Yeah. So you were mentioning about your clothes cupboard, though. So what about your clothes cupboard?
Well, I have colour coordinated my shirts, so I know exactly where a shirt is because all the whites are together and all that. I'm very proud of this fact. All my casual shirts are on wooden hangers. All my work shirts are on slightly thinner black hangers.
Right.
So, and all my summer shirts are right down in the corner, like short sleeve Hawaiian shirts, etc. Okay. And I don't understand why anybody wouldn't do that, because when I want to find a shirt, I don't want to be going through hundreds of shirts thinking, where is it? I know exactly where it is. Why? Because it's organised.
Fair enough.
I'm organised.
I have a slightly
I'm not obsessive. I'm organised.
It's quite difficult to get into my cupboard because I need to clear out some of it. Okay, but I have a different
all
scenario.
The sparkly outfits you've got.
Well, yeah, something like that. But because I'm wearing shirts on stage all the time, and I kind of want to, kind of wear different things. Yeah. I have the system that when I have washed it, I put it on the right-hand side of my shirts. Okay. So therefore, it's like a
So you're saying that the ones down the left are not washed?
No, the ones on the left,
sweaty shirts that you put back in your wardrobe. Is that what you're saying?
Not quite. No, they've been washed. They go back in on the right-hand side, and then I pick from the left. So therefore, I'm always taking out a shirt that I haven't worn for ages. Now I've just worn that shirt, and it goes back to the back of the queue, effectively.
That's each to their own.
Although it depends on if I'm having, as I call it, a fat day, and then I have to choose different shirts. You see, because and if I'm having a thinner day, then I'll wear the tighter fitting shirts.
Okay.
So anyway, not really sure why we're talking about that. Love or hate roller coasters?
Love roller coasters.
Okay, any particular?
As long as they're
ones?
up and down and not in circles. I can't do the circles. Got knocked out twice playing rugby when I was 18, and my head can't take it. I cannot go round. I'll throw up. Up and down roller coaster. Love.
You're all good on those, right? Then, do you hang your toilet roll over the top or behind the back?
Oh well, ridiculous question. Of course, it's over the top. Why would it be round the back? What is the logic of that decision?
I've had 2 people saying they do hang it behind the back, and I had that same reaction that you've just had.
And if I went into their toilet, I'd change it.
That is often a question I ask, but there is legitimate reasons why some people have it behind the back. Reason number 1 is that they have a cat that likes to play with the toilet roll, and therefore the cat pings it out.
Why are you leaving the door open?
And it ends like an anthrax. And the other one is children sometimes do the same thing, and they will play around with the toilet roll and make it look like the Andrex advert.
So you teach them not to. It's called parenting.
Yeah, but they're only 2. But over the top is, of course, the correct answer. Right, do you eat your chocolate from the fridge or from the cupboard?
Bit of both. Not an either or. I keep chocolate in the fridge if I'm concerned that I'm not going to be getting back to it for a while.
Yeah.
So I like a bit of cold chocolate.
Like a bit of both.
Bit of both.
Okay. I think I know the answer to this question. Do you make your bed in the morning?
Yes. 100%.
All right.
I'm a great fan of Jordan Peterson, the clinical psychologist.
Yeah.
Who's very simple format. Is start the day. There's enough of my life that is total chaos without adding to the mix, and I totally believe that having some kind of order in your environment is great for mental health and being productive, and I'm useless in so many ways, but that's not
you
one
really
of them.
are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm joking. Okay, follow-up question then is, apart from the pillows, do you have any cushions on your bed as well?
Absolutely not. Oh, my God. Actually, I do. What am I saying?
Oh, no.
I do.
Look at that face.
I've got 2 small pillows that I put on, which have got love hearts on.
Why? Why are they there, Johnny?
I think it's
you get to the end of the day,
to make my girlfriend feel better.
There you go. There's the reason why.
Then when you've got a sofa that's got 15 cushions on, it's like, oh, for God's sake, have a couple, but you don't need 15.
We've got 6. So
6.
Yeah, 6. I've also changed recently how I make my bed. So I was doing some research about this for a variety of reasons, right. And yeah, it's actually much better if you fold the quilt back over to allow the bed sheets air to breathe. So, so therefore, all the bed bugs and all of that dissipate, and all the sweat and everything just goes. So yeah, I now
could
fold
just wash
my
your sheets
over.
regularly. That's another thought.
Could, but I think once a year is fine. What is your favourite breakfast?
Well, it used to be cornflakes. I was a big cornflakes. I used to do them very specific. I'd squash them on one, so take out all the air, and then just have one layer of airy cornflakes at the top. Okay. That was my all-time favourite. But but the trouble is, I'm piling sugar on it, so I'm sort of getting away from that now. Right. So I'm more of a boiled egg and porridge man now. Boiled egg and porridge, not too bad. If you had to do it, what would be your go-to karaoke song? In the Ghetto. Okay. Elvis. And can we have a little rendition? No. I did it for my drama application to LAMDA, London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, which was the #1 drama school in London at the time. Right. And I did In the Ghetto. I got down to the last 58, I think it was. And literally I was like a verse in, and they went, "That's it. That's fine." I was like, oh my God, they hate Simon me. Cowell moment. Yeah, Simon, they hate me. But apparently all they wanted to know was, can you sing in tune? So I can vaguely hold a tune. But you're still not going to give us a very quick rendition, just to know. Okay. Favourite TV program? Oh, go on. No, don't let me stop you. No, that's all I'm giving you. Wait, you heard it here first. Favourite TV program or film? Favourite film, Gladiator. Okay. Favourite TV program, Cheers. Cheers. Okay, why Cheers? A lot of people, when I was working behind bars as an out-of-work actor, you'd say American sort of tourists, have you ever heard of Sam Malone? So apparently I look a bit like him. So. Yeah, I can see the similarity. I loved it. I thought the characters were wonderful. Norm and Cliff and of course Fraser. It was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant show. Just about, relative bunch of losers who I related to, who were great mates and had great times. So it was a wonderful show. It is a great programme, and Fraser, the follow-up to that, was also a fantastic programme as well. Right, 2 questions to go then for you, Johnny. If you came back in your next life as an animal, which one would you be and why? A lion, because I'm a Leo and I want to be king of the jungle. Do you know, I don't think anyone's ever actually said a lion. Is that right? You're the first to say a lion. I am a Leo, so... Okay. Yeah, my favourite animal. Are you a believer in horoscopes and stuff then? Or? Only if they say nice things about me. Right, they always say nice things. Yes, you're right. So yes, the answer is yes, I have a great believer. Yeah. No, of course not, but I love it. But a lion, that's a nice answer, yeah. Most people say a cat, so at least you're a big cat. But you're I'm about to say the top dog, but just the whole king of the jungle. I love it. Fair enough. It. You've got about 4 wives and loads of kids that love you, and all you've got to do is fight a couple of times, just to maintain your dominance. Your last question then, Johnny. Where is your happy place? My happy place is with family and with friends. Oh, that's a nice. And my son Tommy. That's very nice. Thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've loved having you back on, if I'm honest with you. My pleasure, Richard. Thank you for having me. I'm pretty certain there's going to be a part 3 at some point, because we are scratching the surface still on everything to do with this. And we're going to finish off with one of your favourite bands, The Who. No, the favourite band. Oh, it's your favourite band ever? And my favourite song. And is it My Generation? Is that your favourite song? No. No, okay, so it's not your favourite song, but this is one that I've picked for you. Just enjoy it anyway. Thank you, Johnny. My pleasure.